my wife declared. From now on, I decide when we spend time together. Stop bothering me. So I did exactly that. 2 weeks of absolute silence. When she suddenly showed up at my job, My name's Grant Porter, and I've been married to Layla Porter for exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 14 days. Not that I'm counting or anything, but when you're living through what I'm living through, you start tracking time like a prisoner scratching marks on a cell wall. Now, before you start feeling sorry for me or thinking I'm about to launch into some sob story about how marriage destroyed my soul, let me clarify something right off the bat. I actually thought I'd won the lottery. I mean, seriously, for the first 6 months of our marriage, I was walking around like some smug bastard who'd cracked the Da Vinci Code of relationships. I'd see my buddies at the gym complaining about their wives nagging them about leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor or forgetting to pick up milk, and I'd just smile like the Cheshire Cat and think, yeah, couldn't relate, brothers. My wife sends me heart emojis before I've even had my morning coffee. And she did. Every single morning, like clockwork, my phone would buzz with some variation of, "Good morning, handsome 2 hearts," or "Can't wait to see you tonight, face blowing a kiss," or my personal favorite, "Just thinking about you, red heart fired." I'm talking about the kind of texts that make you feel like you're still in the honeymoon phase, even when you're just taking out the trash in your ratty sweatpants, and those Crocs you swore you'd never wear in public, but somehow became your house shoes. The woman would literally send me selfies captioned, "Missing you already, handsome," while I was in the next room. Like, babe, I can hear you breathing through the wall. But sure, let's pretend we're star-crossed lovers separated by an ocean instead of 12 feet of drywall, and that IKEA bookshelf we argued about assembling. Looking back now, I realize I should have known something was off about that level of intensity. But you know how it is when you're riding high on newlywed bliss and everyone's telling you how lucky you are. My mom would call and gush about how Layla was such a keeper and how she'd finally found someone who made me happy. My best friend Miles, who'd been through 2 divorces by 35, would shake his head in amazement and say things like, "Man, you really did hack the system, didn't you?" And I believed it. Oh boy, did I believe it. I walked around with this insufferable confidence, like I'd discovered some secret cheat code to marital happiness that nobody else had figured out. I even considered writing a blog about it. Something obnoxious like The Alpha Husband's Guide to Keeping Your Wife Obsessed or Marriage Mastery, How I Stay Winning. Thank God I never got around to that, because the internet would have roasted me alive once everything went sideways. But here's the thing about those first 6 months. They were genuinely great. I'm not going to lie and pretend it was all a manipulation or some elaborate setup, because it wasn't. Layla was fun, spontaneous, and actually laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones about dad bods and why cereal is technically a soup. We'd have these ridiculous dance parties in the kitchen at midnight, making quesadillas and debating whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It obviously is, fight me. She'd leave little notes in my lunch bag with hearts drawn on them, and I'd come home to find her wearing my old college hoodie, looking adorable and claiming she just missed my smell. We went on weekend road trips to nowhere in particular, sang terribly to 90s pop songs, and had the kind of inside jokes that made other couples roll their eyes. It was the kind of relationship that made single people bitter and married people jealous, and I'm not ashamed to admit I absolutely loved every second of it. Then, somewhere between the happy first anniversary card she'd bought me 3 weeks early, because she couldn't wait to give it to me, and the great dishwasher loading debate of March, which, for the record, I still maintain I was correct about. There's a right way and a wrong way, people. Something glitched in the matrix. It wasn't a dramatic shift, not at first. It started with small things, the kind of changes you notice but convince yourself you're imagining because you don't want to be that paranoid husband who reads into everything. The morning texts became less frequent, then they'd arrive later in the day, then they'd be shorter, just a simple hey, instead of the emoji-laden novels I'd gotten used to. The selfies stopped. The random, "I love you" messages dried up like a creek in a drought. She stopped wearing my hoodies and started staying up later, scrolling through her phone with this distant expression that made me feel like I was watching a stranger inhabit my wife's body. But the real kicker? Layla became corporate. And I don't mean she got a promotion or started taking her job more seriously. I mean she started treating our marriage like a failing business that needed restructuring. Suddenly, Every conversation felt like a quarterly review meeting where I was the underperforming employee who just couldn't meet expectations. She'd send these cold, transactional text messages that read like they were written by someone's passive-aggressive HR department. "Hi Grant, I'll be unavailable for intimacy this week. Regards." Who the hell says regards to their husband? That's what you write at the end of an email to a coworker you don't particularly like, but have to maintain professional courtesy with. I half expected her to start BCCing me on her texts and scheduling our conversations through Outlook calendar with 20-minute time blocks and agenda items. At first, I did what any reasonable person would do when faced with their spouse's sudden personality transplant. I brushed it off as stress. Maybe it was work. She'd been pulling longer hours at the marketing firm, dealing with some demanding client who wanted their entire brand identity redesigned in 48 hours. Or maybe it was hormones, because let's be honest, I'm a dude and blaming mysterious female hormones seemed like a safe bet that wouldn't get me in too much trouble. I even briefly considered that it might be Mercury retrograde, because my coworker's girlfriend Jasmine was super into astrology and kept warning everyone at the office that communication planets were in chaos, and we should all expect misunderstandings and technical difficulties. I didn't actually believe in that stuff, but at that point, I was willing to blame any celestial body or cosmic phenomenon that would explain why my wife had suddenly transformed from lovey-dovey newlywed to Ice Queen CEO. I tried to talk to her about it, like adults supposedly do in healthy relationships. I'd say things like, "Hey, babe, is everything okay? You seem a little distant lately." And she'd hit me with responses that were so perfectly crafted to shut down the conversation, it was almost impressive. "I'm fine, Grant. Just tired. Nothing's wrong. You're overthinking things. Can we not do this right now?" It was like talking to a customer service chatbot that had 3 programmed responses and no actual interest in resolving your issue. The worst part was that she'd deliver these lines with this look, this exhausted, slightly annoyed expression that made me feel like I was the problem for even bringing it up, like I was some needy, clingy husband who couldn't handle his wife having a bad day or two. But oh, was I wrong. So spectacularly, magnificently wrong about what was actually happening. Because what I thought was just a rough patch or a temporary mood shift was actually the beginning of something I never saw coming. A complete relationship paradigm shift that would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about love, marriage, and whether I'd accidentally married a human being or a very convincing robot programmed to simulate affection for exactly 6 months before reverting to factory settings. Spoiler alert, things were about to get a whole lot weirder, and my days of feeling like I'd hacked marriage were about to come crashing down harder than my attempt at assembling that IKEA bookshelf without the instructions. The night everything officially went off the rails happened on a Thursday, which is fitting because Thursdays are inherently cursed days, too far from the weekend to feel hopeful, too close to the end of the week to pretend you're still fresh and motivated. I was parked on our sectional couch, the one we'd bought together at that furniture warehouse where the saleswoman kept calling us, "You lovebirds," until I wanted to crawl into one of the display mattresses and never come out, watching a documentary about ducks on National Geographic. And before you judge me for my viewing choices, let me tell you that ducks are actually fascinating creatures with some seriously dark mating habits that make human relationships look like a Disney movie. I was about 40 minutes deep into learning about mallard territorial disputes when I heard the front door slam with the kind of force that rattles picture frames and signals that someone's about to make your evening significantly worse. Layla walked into the living room like a lawyer entering a courtroom where she already knows the verdict is in her favor, and she sighed. Not just any sigh, mind you, but one of those long, dramatic exhales that sounds like you've personally offended the very air she breathes. It was the kind of sigh my mom used to do when I'd forget to take the chicken out of the freezer for dinner. Except this sigh came with a side of contempt that suggested I'd committed some unforgivable crime against humanity. I looked up from my duck documentary, remote still in hand, watching as she stood there in her work clothes. Those designer slacks that cost more than my monthly gym membership, and that silk blouse she claimed was an investment piece, when I nearly had a heart attack looking at the credit card statement. "Grant," she said, and the way she said my name made it sound like a diagnosis, like a doctor telling you that yes, those weird symptoms you've been ignoring are definitely something serious. "We need to talk. Now." Let me tell you something about the phrase, "we need to talk," that every person in a relationship already knows. Nothing good has ever followed those 4 words in the history of human communication. It's right up there with "it's not you, it's me," and "I think we should see other people in the Hall of Fame of relationship doom." I actually felt my stomach do that little flip thing, like when you're on a roller coaster and you've just reached the top of the first big drop and you're thinking, "Why did I get on this ride? Who thought this was a good idea?" She crossed her arms, and I could see she'd already rehearsed this speech, probably in the car on the way home, or maybe even in the bathroom mirror at work during her lunch break, perfecting her delivery like she was about to give a TED Talk titled, "How to Destroy Your Husband's Evening in Under 5 Minutes." I muted the duck documentary. Those territorial disputes would have to wait, and gave her my full attention, which apparently was exactly what she didn't want because she looked even more annoyed that I was actually listening. "From now on," she announced, and I swear to God she said it like she was unveiling a new company policy at a staff meeting, "I'll decide when we spend time together. Stop bothering me." She just stood there, waiting for my reaction, and I could tell she expected me to immediately start arguing or maybe even begging, asking her what I'd done wrong and how I could fix it. But here's the thing about being blindsided by your wife declaring what essentially amounts to martial law in your own marriage. Your brain kind of short-circuits for a second. I blinked at her, still holding the remote like it was some kind of safety blanket, and tried to process what I'd just heard. Did she really just tell me to stop bothering her? Were we roommates now? Did I miss the memo about our marriage transitioning into some kind of hands-off arrangement where I needed permission slips to interact with my own wife? Cool, I finally said, because what else do you say when someone drops a conversational bomb like that? So, do I need to book an appointment through HR, or is there like a household portal I should be using? Maybe a Google Calendar link where I can see your availability? I was genuinely asking, but I also couldn't resist the sarcasm because, come on, the absurdity of the situation practically demanded it. My buddy Miles had told me about his ex-wife who'd once made him schedule intimate time 2 weeks in advance, and I'd laughed thinking that would never be me. Yet here I was, apparently living that nightmare in real time. She rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't get stuck looking at the back of her skull, and she hit me with the classic, "I'm serious, Grant. You're too clingy." Clingy. That word hung in the air like a bad smell, and I had to resist the urge to laugh out loud because the accusation was so wildly off base, it was almost impressive. Me? Clingy? I once waited 3 hours outside Zara. 3 full hours. While she tried on what must have been every single item in that godforsaken store, including things that weren't even her size, because she wanted to see how the cut looked. I sat on that uncomfortable bench by the entrance, watching an endless parade of shopping bags and screaming toddlers go by, checking my phone every 5 minutes and fighting the urge to fake a family emergency just to escape. I didn't complain once. Not when my back started hurting from that concrete bench. Not when I got hungry and realized I'd stupidly skipped lunch. Not even when she emerged with only one item after those 3 hours. A scarf that she'd returned the following week because the color looked different in natural light. That's not clingy. That's Olympic-level devotion. That's the kind of patience that should earn you a medal or at least a plaque that says, "World's Most Tolerant Husband." I'd even posted on the husbands group chat, and my buddy Derek had responded with F, like I'd died in battle, which honestly wasn't far from how it felt. But sure, Layla, I'm the clingy one for occasionally wanting to spend time with my wife or expecting a text back within a reasonable time frame. Clearly, I was the problem in this equation. But here's where I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of fighting back or defending myself or launching into a detailed PowerPoint presentation about all the ways I'd been the opposite of clingy, I just smiled. It wasn't even a fake smile. It was genuine, because something inside me just kind of clicked, like a switch flipping in my brain that said, "You know what? Let's see how this plays out." It was the kind of smile you give when you suddenly realize you're holding all the cards, but your opponent doesn't know it yet. "Sure thing, boss," I said, giving her a little mock salute for good measure. "Consider me officially unbothered and entirely too busy to bother you. I'll be over here in my designated zone, living my best unclingy life." The sarcasm was thick enough to spread on toast, but she either didn't catch it or didn't care. She just stood there for another few seconds, maybe expecting me to crumble or chase after her when she inevitably stormed off, but I simply unmuted my duck documentary and went back to learning about aquatic bird behavior. She stormed off, and yes, it was a proper storm off, complete with heavy footsteps and the dramatic slamming of our bedroom door that made the living room walls shudder. I could practically feel her satisfaction radiating through the house, like she'd just won some major victory and established dominance in our relationship hierarchy. She probably thought she'd put me in my place, drawn a clear boundary that would make me realize how much I needed her, and send me crawling back with apologies and promises to be less needy. What she didn't realize, what she couldn't possibly have predicted in that moment of self-righteous triumph, was that she'd just handed me something I didn't even know I wanted. Permission. Permission to stop trying. Permission to stop walking on eggshells. Permission to stop being the only person in our marriage who seemed to give a damn about making it work. She'd just signed what I started calling the silence contract, a legally non-binding but emotionally liberating agreement that I would take her at her exact word and stop bothering her completely. And brother, was I about to honor that contract like my life depended on it. The ducks on my TV screen fought over territory, completely oblivious to the fact that my marriage had just shifted into a whole new phase. One where I discover that sometimes the best move in a relationship is simply to stop playing the game altogether. So I did exactly what she asked, and let me tell you, it was harder than I thought it would be. Not because I was desperately missing her or anything, but because breaking habits is legitimately difficult when you've spent 2 years conditioning yourself to operate a certain way. Day one of the silence contract was rough, I'm not gonna lie. I woke up that Friday morning and my thumb literally hovered over her name in my contacts. Muscle memory, trying to send the usual good morning text that I'd been sending for the past 2 years like some kind of automated messaging bot. I caught myself about 3 times before noon, each time stopping and reminding myself, nope, she said stop bothering her, and I'm a man of my word. If Layla Porter wants radio silence, then Grant Porter is about to become the human equivalent of a dead signal. Day 2 was when the withdrawal symptoms really kicked in. I'm talking about that weird anxiety you get when you're used to constant communication and suddenly there's just nothing. My phone felt lighter somehow, less important, like it had lost its primary function. I'd pick it up expecting notifications that weren't there, phantom buzzes that turned out to be just my imagination playing tricks on me. Around 3 in the afternoon, I actually typed out, "Hey, how's your day going?" and had my finger on the send button before my brain screamed at me like a drill sergeant. Stand down, soldier. Remember the mission. I deleted that message so fast you'd think it was evidence in a criminal trial. But by day 3, something started shifting in my consciousness, like clouds parting after a storm you didn't even realize was happening. I woke up, went through my morning routine, shower, coffee, pretending to care about the news, and realized I hadn't thought about texting Layla even once. It just didn't occur to me. And that's when it hit me. Wait a second, she told me not to bother her. This isn't me being petty or playing games. This is me literally following her explicit instructions. I was just being an obedient husband, really. If anything, I deserved a gold star for my excellent listening skills and ability to respect clearly stated boundaries. The more I thought about it, the more liberated I felt, like I'd just discovered a loophole in the universe that had been there all along. Day 4 was when I actually started thriving, and I use that word intentionally because thriving is exactly what it felt like. You know how people talk about finding themselves after a breakup? Well, I was finding myself during a marriage, which is either really sad or really enlightening, depending on how you look at it. I discovered what peace sounds like when no one's around to remind you to fix your tone, or sighing dramatically because you chewed your cereal too loud, or existing in a way that somehow offends them. It's quiet, man. Like, genuinely, beautifully quiet. I could hear my own thoughts for the first time in months, and turns out they were pretty decent company. That Saturday, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I rejoined the gym. Not the fancy boutique place where Layla used to drag me for couples yoga classes that made me feel like my body was betraying me in real time, but the old-school iron-pumping gym downtown where guys grunt unapologetically and nobody cares if you're wearing matching workout gear. The moment I walked in, I felt like I'd come home. The smell of rubber mats and protein shakes, the sound of weights clanking, the motivational posters that were so cheesy they circled back around to being genuinely inspiring. It was perfect. That's where I met Zach, or rather, re-met him, because we'd actually gone to the same high school about a decade ago, but had been in different social circles. Zach looked like someone had photoshopped a human being to achieve maximum muscle definition. The dude was built like a Greek statue that had been specifically designed to make regular guys feel inadequate. He spotted me struggling with a bench press that was probably too ambitious for someone who'd spent the last year getting their exercise by walking from the couch to the fridge, and he came over with this genuine smile that immediately made me like him. "Hey man, you need a spotter?" he asked, and I gratefully accepted because the alternative was getting crushed by a barbell and having death by overconfidence at the gym written on my tombstone. We got to talking between sets, and I found myself actually opening up about the whole Layla situation, not in a pathetic, crying into my protein shake way, but more like sharing a bizarre story that was happening to someone else. Zach listened, nodded knowingly, and then said something that absolutely sent me. "Bro, she put you on Do Not Disturb mode? That's cold." We both cracked up, and just like that, I had a gym buddy who understood the absurdity of my situation without making me feel like a victim. The other unexpected blessing of the silence contract came at work. You know Elena, my coworker who I mentioned? She works in the accounting department and has the emotional range of a golden retriever. Everything is either amazing or the best thing ever or so exciting in a way that should be annoying but somehow isn't. We'd always been friendly, grabbing coffee occasionally or chatting by the microwave in the break room, but we'd never really hung out beyond that. But during that first week of my newfound freedom, she noticed something different about me during our Monday morning coffee run. "Grant, you seem lighter," she said, tilting her head like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Did you get a haircut or something?" I laughed and told her no, just making some life adjustments. And before I knew it, we were having lunch together in the cafeteria, talking about everything from her disastrous attempts at pottery classes to my duck documentary obsession. Elena had this way of making even mundane conversations feel interesting, like she was genuinely fascinated by whatever you were saying, and I realized how much I'd missed having actual friends outside of my marriage. By the end of that first week, I'd established a whole new routine that didn't involve waiting for texts that wouldn't come or wondering if my wife would deign to spend time with me. I was hitting the gym 3 times a week with Zach, having lunch with Elena on Wednesdays, and spending my evenings doing whatever the hell I wanted, whether that was watching documentaries about aquatic birds, reading books I'd been meaning to get to, or just sitting in blessed silence without anyone making me feel guilty for existing. I even started journaling, which I never thought I'd be the type to do, but my therapist friend Marcus had recommended it years ago, and I figured why not give it a shot. My entry for day 8 read, "Still alive. Haven't been nagged about laundry placement in 7 days. Spirits high. Zach says my form is improving. Elena brought me cookies she baked that were slightly burnt, but I ate them anyway, because that's what friends do. Is this what peace feels like?" Turns out it was. And brother, peace was looking pretty damn good on me. So I did exactly what she asked, and let me tell you, it was harder than I thought it would be. Not because I was desperately missing her or anything, but because breaking habits is legitimately difficult when you've spent 2 years conditioning yourself to operate a certain way. Day 1 of the silence contract was rough, I'm not gonna lie. I woke up that Friday morning and my thumb literally hovered over her name in my contacts. Muscle memory, trying to send the usual good morning text that I'd been sending for the past 2 years like some kind of automated messaging bot. I caught myself about 3 times before noon, each time stopping and reminding myself. Nope, she said stop bothering her, and I'm a man of my word. If Layla Porter wants radio silence, then Grant Porter is about to become the human equivalent of a dead signal. Day 2 was when the withdrawal symptoms really kicked in. I'm talking about that weird anxiety you get when you're used to constant communication and suddenly there's just nothing. My phone felt lighter somehow, less important, like it had lost its primary function. I'd pick it up expecting notifications that weren't there, phantom buzzes that turned out to be just my imagination playing tricks on me. Around 3 in the afternoon, I actually typed out, "Hey, how's your day going?" and had my finger on the send button before my brain screamed at me like a drill sergeant. "Stand down, soldier. Remember the mission." I deleted that message so fast you'd think it was evidence in a criminal trial. But by day 3, something started shifting in my consciousness, like clouds parting after a storm you didn't even realize was happening. I woke up, went through my morning routine, shower, coffee, pretending to care about the news, and realized I hadn't thought about texting Layla even once. It just didn't occur to me. And that's when it hit me. Wait a second, she told me not to bother her. This isn't me being petty or playing games. This is me literally following her explicit instructions. I was just being an obedient husband, really. If anything, I deserved a gold star for my excellent listening skills and ability to respect clearly stated boundaries. The more I thought about it, the more liberated I felt, like I'd just discovered a loophole in the universe that had been there all along. Day 4 was when I actually started thriving, and I use that word intentionally because thriving is exactly what it felt like. You know how people talk about finding themselves after a breakup? Well, I was finding myself during a marriage, which is either really sad or really enlightening, depending on how you look at it. I discovered what peace sounds like when no one's around to remind you to fix your tone, or sighing dramatically because you chewed your cereal too loud, or existing in a way that somehow offends them. It's quiet, man. Like, genuinely, beautifully quiet. I could hear my own thoughts for the first time in months, and turns out they were pretty decent company. That Saturday, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I rejoined the gym. Not the fancy boutique place where Layla used to drag me for couples yoga classes that made me feel like my body was betraying me in real time, but the old-school iron-pumping gym downtown where guys grunt unapologetically and nobody cares if you're wearing matching workout gear. The moment I walked in, I felt like I'd come home. The smell of rubber mats and protein shakes, the sound of weights clanking, the motivational posters that were so cheesy they circled back around to being genuinely inspiring. It was perfect. That's where I met Zach, or rather, re-met him, because we'd actually gone to the same high school about a decade ago, but had been in different social circles. Zach looked like someone had photoshopped a human being to achieve maximum muscle definition. The dude was built like a Greek statue that had been specifically designed to make regular guys feel inadequate. He spotted me struggling with a bench press that was probably too ambitious for someone who'd spent the last year getting their exercise by walking from the couch to the fridge, and he came over with this genuine smile that immediately made me like him. "Hey man, you need a spotter?" he asked, and I gratefully accepted because the alternative was getting crushed by a barbell and having death by overconfidence at the gym written on my tombstone. We got to talking between sets, and I found myself actually opening up about the whole Layla situation, not in a pathetic, crying into my protein shake way, but more like sharing a bizarre story that was happening to someone else. Zach listened, nodded knowingly, and then said something that absolutely sent me. "Bro, she put you on Do Not Disturb mode? That's cold." We both cracked up, and just like that, I had a gym buddy who understood the absurdity of my situation without making me feel like a victim. The other unexpected blessing of the silence contract came at work. You know Elena, my coworker who I mentioned? She works in the accounting department and has the emotional range of a golden retriever. Everything is either amazing or the best thing ever, or so exciting, in a way that should be annoying but somehow isn't. We'd always been friendly, grabbing coffee occasionally or chatting by the microwave in the break room, but we'd never really hung out beyond that. But during that first week of my newfound freedom, she noticed something different about me during our Monday morning coffee run. "Grant, you seem lighter," she said, tilting her head like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Did you get a haircut or something?" I laughed and told her no, just making some life adjustments. And before I knew it, we were having lunch together in the cafeteria, talking about everything from her disastrous attempts at pottery classes to my duck documentary obsession. Elena had this way of making even mundane conversations feel interesting, like she was genuinely fascinated by whatever you were saying, and I realized how much I'd missed having actual friends outside of my marriage. By the end of that first week, I'd established a whole new routine that didn't involve waiting for texts that wouldn't come or wondering if my wife would deign to spend time with me. I was hitting the gym 3 times a week with Zach, having lunch with Elena on Wednesdays, and spending my evenings doing whatever the hell I wanted, whether that was watching documentaries about aquatic birds, reading books I'd been meaning to get to, or just sitting in blessed silence without anyone making me feel guilty for existing. I even started journaling, which I never thought I'd be the type to do, but my therapist friend Marcus had recommended it years ago, and I figured why not give it a shot. My entry for day 8 read, "Still alive. Haven't been nagged about laundry placement in 7 days. Spirits high. Zach says my form is improving. Elena brought me cookies she baked that were slightly burnt, but I ate them anyway, because that's what friends do. Is this what peace feels like?" Turns out it was. And brother, peace was looking pretty damn good on me. A week passed, then another few days. Then suddenly it was 2 weeks, and I realized something genuinely shocking. I hadn't received a single call, text, emoji, or even one of those passive-aggressive red receipts that let you know someone saw your message but chose violence instead of responding. My phone's notification center looked like a ghost town, tumbleweeds practically rolling across the screen. It was the kind of silence that would have sent the old Grant into a spiral of anxiety and self-doubt. But the new Grant? The liberated, gym-going, duck documentary-watching Grant. He was living his best life and honestly couldn't care less. What made the whole situation even more bizarre was Layla's social media presence, or rather, the complete lack of it. Now, you have to understand something about my wife. This woman posts everything. And I mean everything. Her Instagram story is usually a minute-by-minute documentary of her day. Brunch with the girls where every plate gets photographed from 6 different angles, fresh manicures that apparently require a professional photo shoot, random dogs we encounter on the street that aren't even ours, but she treats them like they're her long-lost children. She once posted a 15-slide carousel about a smoothie. A smoothie, with captions about wellness journeys and choosing yourself, and a bunch of hashtags that probably reached people in countries I couldn't locate on a map. But lately, radio silence. Her Instagram hadn't been updated in almost 2 weeks, which in Layla's world was the equivalent of falling off the face of the earth. No stories, no posts, no carefully curated snapshots of her supposedly enviable life. I noticed because, let's be honest, even when you're trying not to think about someone, you still check their social media like a detective investigating a cold case. It's human nature, or maybe it's just my nature. I haven't decided yet. Either way, the absence was noticeable, like when your neighbor who always mows their lawn at 7 in the morning suddenly stops, and you can't help but wonder if they're okay, or if they finally realize that 7 a.m. lawn maintenance is psychotic behavior. I mentioned this oddity to Miles over beers that Thursday night at our usual spot. This dive bar called the Rusty Anchor that serves wings so good they should probably be illegal, and beer so cheap you don't ask questions about its origin story. Miles is my oldest friend, the kind of guy who's been through enough relationship drama to write a manual on what not to do. And he has this annoying habit of being right about things even when you don't want him to be. We were 3 beers in, working through a mountain of buffalo wings that would definitely require a gym apology session with Zach the next morning, when I brought up the whole situation. So she's gone full digital blackout, huh? Miles said, wiping hot sauce from his beard with a napkin that had seen better days. Classic move. She's waiting to see how long it takes before you crawl back, begging for attention like a puppy who peed on the carpet. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was explaining basic physics or why you shouldn't microwave aluminum foil. I laughed, actually laughed, because the whole thing was so ridiculous when you said it out loud. She told me not to crawl at all, man. I'm just respecting boundaries like a good, emotionally intelligent husband. If anything, I deserve an award for my excellent communication skills and ability to follow simple instructions. I grabbed another wing, feeling pretty damn proud of myself. She wanted space? I'm giving her the entire solar system. I'm out here respecting her wishes so hard it should be considered an Olympic sport. Miles raised his beer in salute. I gotta hand it to you, Porter. Most guys would have cracked by now, sending those sad "are you okay?" texts at 2 in the morning. But you're out here actually calling her bluff. I'm impressed. Coming from a guy who'd sent his ex-wife a 37-text apology for something he didn't even do, that was high praise. The journaling thing had become a daily ritual by this point, something I actually looked forward to instead of it feeling like homework. My entry for day 14 was particularly enlightening. 2 weeks of peace. Layla still hasn't broken silence. Learned today that I actually enjoy cooking when nobody's criticizing my knife skills or sighing dramatically because I used the wrong cutting board. Made scrambled eggs that were genuinely good. Zach increased my bench press weight. Elena showed me photos of her sister's wedding and didn't make me feel guilty for existing. Is this what people mean when they talk about finding yourself? Because here's what I discovered during those 2 weeks of uninterrupted existence. My life had somehow gotten better. My apartment plants, which had been dying a slow death under my neglectful care, were suddenly thriving. I'd actually started watering them regularly, talking to them like they were my therapy group, and they responded by not looking like botanical horror shows. My fridge went from a chaotic mess of expired condiments and mystery leftovers to something almost organized. I could see the back of it for the first time in months. I even knew what was in there without having to play refrigerator roulette. And the cooking. Oh man, the cooking. I'd started actually making real food again. Nothing fancy or Instagram-worthy, just solid man recipes. Eggs cooked 6 different ways, pasta that didn't come from a box, chicken that I seasoned with more than just salt and prayer. It turned out that when nobody was standing behind you making passive-aggressive comments about your culinary technique or suggesting that maybe you should just order takeout instead, cooking was actually enjoyable. Who knew? The bliss was real, tangible, something I could feel in my bones every morning when I woke up without that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. Day 10 of the Silence contract arrived on a Tuesday, which should have been just another ordinary day of minding my own business and living my peaceful, drama-free existence. I was at my desk at work, knee-deep in a spreadsheet that was about as exciting as watching paint dry in slow motion when my phone buzzed. Now, normally a phone buzz is just part of the ambient noise of modern life. Could be a spam call about my car's extended warranty. Could be my mom sending me another Facebook meme she thought was hilarious. Could be literally anything. But when I glanced at the screen and saw Layla's name, my heart did this weird little skip thing, like when you miss a step going downstairs and your body goes into brief panic mode. The message was simple, almost aggressively casual. Hey, that's it. 3 letters. No punctuation, no emoji, no context. Just, hey, sitting there on my screen like a tiny bomb waiting to explode. I stared at it for a solid 30 seconds, my brain trying to process what game we were playing now. This was the woman who told me to stop bothering her, who'd gone full corporate ice queen and declared our marriage was now operating on her schedule only. And now she was hitting me with a hey, like we were acquaintances who hadn't spoken in a while, and she was just checking in. Here's what the old Grant would have done. Immediately responded, probably with something overeager like, hey, how are you? Everything okay? Followed by 3 more texts before she even had a chance to reply, desperate for any crumb of attention. But the new Grant? The evolved, gym-going, mentally stable Grant who'd been living in blessed peace for 10 days? He looked at that text, put his phone face down on his desk, and went back to his spreadsheet like nothing had happened. I ignored it for 6 hours. 6 glorious, petty, absolutely intentional hours. I went to lunch with Elena, hit the gym for a quick session with Zach, responded to actual important work emails, even took the time to reorganize my desk drawer that had become a graveyard for old pens and random receipts. Every time my phone buzzed with what I assumed were follow-up texts, I didn't check. I was in the zone, living my life, completely unbothered. It felt powerful in a way I can't fully explain, like I'd finally figured out how to play a game I didn't even know I was playing. When I finally checked my phone at 6:30 that evening, sitting in my car in the parking lot after work, I saw she'd sent nothing else. Just that one hey sitting there, probably causing her to spiral into confusion about why I wasn't immediately jumping to respond. I typed out my reply with the energy of someone who couldn't care less about the outcome. Hey, send. Mirror her energy, give her exactly what she gave me. It was beautiful in its simplicity. 15 seconds later, and I mean literally 15 seconds, I watched the clock. My phone exploded. Why are you being weird? Buzz. Are you okay? Buzz. This is immature. 3 texts in rapid succession, each one dripping with more indignation than the last, like I'd committed some cardinal sin by not falling over myself to engage with her breadcrumb of communication. I actually laughed out loud in my car, startling the guy walking past who definitely thought I was losing my mind. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife and serve it at a dinner party. Yes, the classic move. Create the rule, then get mad when someone actually follows it. It's like telling someone not to buy you a birthday present and then getting offended when they show up empty-handed. She'd drawn the boundaries, established the terms of engagement, literally told me to stop bothering her, and now she was big mad that I'd taken her seriously? The audacity was almost impressive. I didn't respond to those follow-up texts either, just put my phone away and drove home with this weird sense of satisfaction bubbling in my chest. The next day at work, people started noticing something different about me. Sarah from marketing stopped by my desk and said, "Grant, I don't know what you're doing differently, but you seem genuinely happier. Like, lighter or something. What changed? I leaned back in my chair, grinning like I'd just discovered the secret to life. Marriage update, I said casually. My wife put me on airplane mode, so I'm just living at 30,000 feet now, completely unreachable and loving every minute of it. She laughed, probably thinking I was joking, but I was dead serious. Even my boss commented during our team meeting that my energy seemed more positive lately, and whatever I was doing, I should keep it up. Turns out that not being emotionally drained by someone who treats you like an inconvenience does wonders for your workplace performance. Who knew? Around day 12 of my self-imposed exile from marital drama, something miraculous happened that I genuinely didn't see coming. I started feeling good. Not just okay, or getting by, or that fake kind of good where you tell people you're fine, but you're really just holding it together with duct tape and denial. I mean actually, legitimately good. Like, waking up refreshed kind of good. The kind of good where you catch yourself humming in the shower and don't immediately feel embarrassed about it. It was wild, honestly, because I didn't realize how much of my energy had been getting drained by the constant emotional maintenance that marriage to Layla required. Like running a program in the background of your computer that you don't even notice until you close it, and suddenly everything runs faster. Turns out peace is criminally underrated. Nobody talks about peace like it's this desirable thing. Everyone's always chasing passion and excitement, and that spark that keeps relationships interesting. But you know what's actually interesting? Sleeping through the entire night without waking up at 3 a.m. with anxiety about whether you said something wrong at dinner or forgot some arbitrary anniversary of the first time you shared cheese fries or whatever ridiculous milestone you're supposed to remember. I was sleeping like I'd been drugged, the good kind of drug where you wake up actually feeling rested instead of like you've been hit by a truck carrying bags of exhaustion. I'd started running again. Something I hadn't done since college when I briefly convinced myself I was athletic before reality and shin splints set in. Nothing crazy, just 30 minutes around the neighborhood 3 times a week, but it felt amazing. There's something about running that clears your head, like all the mental garbage gets shaken loose and falls out through your feet onto the pavement. Plus, Zach at the gym had been giving me tips on building stamina, and I was determined not to look like a dying walrus every time I attempted cardio. Even my Spotify algorithm had gotten healthier. Instead of the sad breakup playlist vibes it had been serving me for months, it started suggesting upbeat stuff, pump-up jams, music that made you want to conquer the day instead of crying into your cereal. Then, like clockwork, just when I was really hitting my stride in this whole peace and happiness thing, the calls began. It started innocently enough, one call during my lunch break on day 13. I was sitting at Chipotle with Elena, debating whether guacamole was worth the upcharge. It absolutely is, don't at me, when my phone lit up with Layla's name. Elena raised her eyebrows, mid-bite into her burrito bowl, and I just shook my head and declined the call. Not today, Satan, I muttered, and Elena nearly choked on her rice laughing. But that was just the opening act. By that evening, my phone was blowing up like I was suddenly the most popular person in America. 3 calls in 2 hours, each one ignored with increasing satisfaction on my part. The thing is, I wasn't ignoring her to be petty or play games. I was genuinely too busy not bothering her, exactly as instructed. I was at the gym with Zach, trying to perfect my deadlift form without throwing my back out like some old man reaching for the remote, when call number 4 came through. Zach noticed me glance at my phone and grin. "Your wife?" he asked, and when I nodded, he just shook his head knowingly. "Bro, she's spiraling. Classic. You're out here living your best life, and she can't handle that she's not the center of your universe anymore." The man had a point. I declined the call and went back to my workout, feeling like I'd just won some invisible battle I didn't even know I was fighting. When I finally picked up, and I only picked up because she called while I was driving home and my car's Bluetooth automatically connected before I could stop it, she went absolutely nuclear. I'm talking full courtroom prosecutor mode, throwing accusations at me like she was trying to get a conviction based purely on volume and indignation. "You're punishing me," she shouted before I could even get a word in. "You're being manipulative. You're making me chase you. This is emotional abuse." Each accusation came flying through my car speakers with such force I briefly worried my neighbors could hear her through my closed windows. I laughed. I genuinely, full belly laughed so hard I nearly had to pull over because my eyes were watering and I couldn't see the road properly. The absurdity of it all hit me like a comedy special I didn't know I needed. This woman who'd literally told me to stop bothering her, who'd established that she would decide when we spent time together, who'd essentially put our marriage on her personal schedule and expected me to just wait around like some loyal dog until she felt like throwing me a bone, was now accusing me of manipulation because I'd actually respected her boundaries? Babe, I said when I finally caught my breath, my voice still shaking with barely suppressed laughter. I'm not punishing you. I'm not being manipulative. I'm not making you chase anyone. I'm literally doing exactly what you asked me to do. I'm not bothering you. You set the rules of engagement here, and I'm just following them to the letter. You're not mad at me. You're mad that I'm doing it better than you expected. You wanted space, and I gave you the entire galaxy. This is what winning looks like when you actually respect someone's stated preferences. The silence on the other end was deafening, the kind of silence that speaks volumes about someone realizing they've been caught in their own trap. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to find some angle, some way to make me the villain in a story where she'd written all the rules. Finally, she said in this small voice that was clearly meant to make me feel guilty, I just thought you'd fight for us. Fight for us. I repeated, genuinely confused now. You told me to stop bothering you. Fighting for us would be bothering you. I can't win here. If I pursue you, I'm clingy and not respecting boundaries. If I give you space, I'm abandoning the relationship. You've created a situation where I'm wrong no matter what I do, so I chose the option that lets me sleep at night and actually enjoy my life. That's not manipulation, Layla. That's called self-preservation. Friday afternoon, 2:15 p.m., and I was deep in what might have been the most mind-numbing project meeting of my entire professional career. We were discussing quarterly projections for the third consecutive hour, and I'd mentally checked out somewhere around the 40-minute mark when Dave from accounting started explaining his new color-coded spreadsheet system that literally nobody asked for. I was doing that thing where you nod occasionally and say to look engaged while actually making a mental grocery list. I needed eggs, coffee, maybe some of that good bread from the bakery section when my desk phone rang. Not my cell phone, which would have been normal, but my actual desk phone that nobody ever calls except for spam about extended warranties or my mom when she forgets my cell number. Kelly from reception's voice came through sounding nervous, like she was calling to inform me that the building was on fire but didn't want to cause a panic. Grant, your wife's here in the lobby. She says it's urgent and needs to see you immediately. There was a pause, and then she added in a whisper, she seems really upset. Like, scary upset. Should I call security? My heart stopped. Actually stopped, like someone had pressed pause on my entire cardiovascular system. My first thought was that something terrible had happened. Family emergency, car accident, house fire, alien invasion, anything that would justify showing up at someone's workplace unannounced. But then my brain caught up with reality, and I realized, no, she didn't. She wouldn't. This woman did not just show up at my office because I wasn't answering her calls. That would be insane. That would be something a person who'd completely lost perspective on appropriate behavior would do. I excused myself from the meeting. Nobody cared. Dave was still talking about his spreadsheets, and probably would be for the next decade, and walked toward the lobby with this growing sense of dread mixed with morbid curiosity. It's like watching a horror movie where the character walks toward the creepy noise in the basement. You know it's a terrible idea, but you can't look away. My coworker Jason passed me in the hallway and did a double take at my expression. Dude, you look like you're walking to your own execution, he said. You good? My wife's in the lobby, I replied, and he made this face like I'd just told him I had a terminal illness. Oh man, thoughts and prayers, brother. He patted my shoulder with genuine sympathy before scurrying away like he didn't want to be anywhere near the blast radius of whatever was about to happen. When I rounded the corner into the lobby, there she was, and I swear the fluorescent lighting made the whole scene look extra dramatic, like a soap opera shot specifically designed for maximum impact. Layla stood there in her designer trench coat, the Burberry one she'd bought during a treat-yourself phase that cost more than my first car, clutching her phone in both hands like it was either a lifeline or a weapon. I couldn't tell which. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless, and she had that look in her eyes that I'd come to recognize as, I'm about to make a scene and I don't care who witnesses it. Kelly was standing behind the reception desk looking like she desperately wanted to disappear into the floor, and I couldn't blame her. The moment Layla saw me, She practically lunged forward, and I instinctively took a step back because I genuinely wasn't sure what was about to happen. "Why aren't you answering my calls?" she hissed, her voice low but intense, like a pressure cooker about to blow. She wasn't yelling. Not yet, but somehow the controlled anger was worse, more unsettling. "I've been trying to reach you for days, Grant. Days. Do you know how worried I've been?" I blinked at her, trying to process the sheer audacity of this moment. Here we were, standing in my office lobby where my boss could walk by at any second, where my coworkers were definitely watching from their cubicles like we were the most entertaining reality show they'd seen all week, and she was demanding to know why I wasn't answering her calls. "Because you told me not to bother you," I said, keeping my voice level and professional because I was very aware that Kelly was probably taking mental notes for the office gossip mill that would be running overtime by Monday. "Not like that," Layla snapped, and her voice went up an octave, echoing slightly off the lobby walls. A few heads definitely popped up from cubicles. I could see them in my peripheral vision, like meerkats sensing drama. You know what I meant. I didn't mean completely ghost me and ignore my calls like I'm some crazy stalker. The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, and I know I shouldn't have let the sarcasm creep in, but I genuinely couldn't help it. "Next time you give me explicit instructions to stop bothering you and let you decide when we communicate, I'll make sure to download the user manual that explains all the hidden meanings and unspoken expectations. Maybe it comes with a decoder ring? Or is there a password I need to access the secret level where your words don't actually mean what they say?" Her face flushed red, and I saw her grip tighten on her phone. Behind her, Kelly had picked up her own phone and was very obviously pretending to be busy while absolutely listening to every word. I could see more coworkers now. Sarah from marketing was frozen at the coffee machine. Tom from IT had stopped mid-stride in the hallway, and I was pretty sure I saw my boss's door crack open slightly. This was a disaster. This was a full-blown, career-potentially damaging, HR might need to get involved disaster. And it was happening in real time. "We need to talk," Layla said, reaching for my arm, and I smoothly sidestepped because the last thing I needed was physical contact captured on the security cameras that I knew were recording every angle of this lobby. "Not here," I said firmly, glancing around at our growing audience. People were now openly staring, not even pretending to work anymore. Mike from sales had his phone out, and I sent him a death glare that hopefully communicated, "If you're filming this, I will personally ensure your next performance review is memorable." I gestured toward the door. "Outside. Now, before HR starts selling popcorn and charging admission." I led her out of the building, very aware that I was probably going to be the subject of approximately 40 different Slack conversations before the day was over, and that my peaceful Friday afternoon had just been nuked from orbit. The moment we stepped outside into the parking lot, the crisp afternoon air hitting my face, Layla absolutely detonated. And I'm not talking about a gentle, controlled release of emotions. I'm talking full-scale nuclear explosion, the kind that registers on seismographs 3 states away and makes birds fly in the opposite direction out of pure self-preservation instinct. She wheeled around on me so fast her trench coat did that dramatic billowing thing you see in movies, and her face had gone from flushed pink to full-on crimson, like someone had cranked the anger dial to 11 and then broken off the knob. "You're trying to manipulate me," she screamed, and I do mean screamed. I'm pretty sure the people in the Starbucks across the street could hear her clearly. A couple walking to their car actually stopped and stared, clearly trying to decide if they should intervene or just enjoy the free entertainment. "You're playing mind games. You're making me look insane. You're doing all of this on purpose to punish me because you're a vindictive, petty manchild who can't handle a strong woman setting boundaries." I just stood there, hands in my pockets, watching her with what I can only describe as anthropological fascination. It was like watching a nature documentary. Here we observe the rarely seen projecting spouse in its natural habitat, displaying classic deflection behaviors when confronted with the consequences of its own actions. Part of me wanted to laugh, part of me wanted to walk away, and a small part of me that I'm not proud of wanted to applaud the sheer audacity of her performance. She was good. I'll give her that. The passion, the conviction, the way she delivered each accusation like it was an undeniable fact rather than completely unhinged nonsense. "Layla," I said, keeping my voice calm and level because I'd learned from years of customer service jobs that the calmer you stay, the crazier the other person looks when they're yelling. I didn't make you look insane. You drove to my workplace during business hours, showed up unannounced in the lobby where my coworkers and boss could see you, and started yelling at me about not answering your calls. You did that, all by yourself. I was just sitting in a meeting learning about Dave's color-coded spreadsheet system, which was boring but definitely not insane, and then you showed up and created this whole situation. I'm not the director of this movie. I'm just an unwilling extra who got dragged onto set. She blinked at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish that had just been told the ocean was actually made of lies, and I could see the gears grinding in her head as she tried to process what I'd just said. Then, because the direct approach wasn't working, she switched tactics faster than a politician during an election year. Her shoulders dropped, her face crumpled, and tears, actual tears, though I had my suspicions about their authenticity, started rolling down her cheeks. Classic move, and one I'd seen approximately 700 times during our marriage whenever logic and reason weren't getting her what she wanted. "I just miss you," she said in this small, broken voice that was clearly calculated to make me feel like a monster. Her bottom lip trembled, and she reached out toward me with one hand like we were in some tragic romance film, and I was supposed to sweep her into my arms and tell her everything would be okay. "I miss my husband. I miss us. Don't you miss me? Don't you miss what we had?" And here's the thing. The old Grant, the Grant from 3 weeks ago who still thought he could fix everything if he just tried hard enough, would have folded like a cheap lawn chair in a hurricane. That Grant would have felt guilty, apologized for enforcing boundaries, and probably would have ended up comforting her while somehow also apologizing for her showing up at his workplace like a stalker. But this Grant, the one who'd been sleeping soundly, hitting the gym with Zach, having lunch with Elena, and generally remembering what peace felt like, this Grant had built up an immunity to the tears, like getting vaccinated against manipulation. "Funny thing about missing someone," I said, and I kept my voice gentle but firm, the way you'd talk to a toddler who's having a meltdown in the cereal aisle. "I've been right here the entire time. In our house. In our city. At this job. In complete silence. Exactly as you requested. You told me to stop bothering you, and I stopped. You said you'd decide when we spent time together, so I waited for you to decide. I didn't disappear to another country or fake my own death. I just respected your explicitly stated wishes. If you miss me, that's a you problem, not a me problem." Her tears didn't land this time, and I could see the exact moment she realized it. Her expression shifted from sad and vulnerable to confused, then quickly morphed into angry again, cycling through emotions like someone flipping through TV channels trying to find something good to watch. "So what? You just don't care anymore? 2 years of marriage and you're just done? You're going to throw away everything we built together because of one little fight?" "One little fight," I repeated, and I felt something snap inside me, not in an explosive way, but more like a rope that had been holding something back finally breaking and letting everything tumble out. "Layla, you didn't pick a fight. You didn't say, 'Hey, I need some space,' or 'I'm feeling overwhelmed. Can we talk about our communication?' You declared that you would decide when we spend time together and told me to stop bothering you. You turned our marriage into a dictatorship where you're the supreme ruler and I'm just some peasant waiting for scraps of attention when you feel like tossing them my way. That's not a fight. That's a fundamental restructuring of our relationship without my input or consent." I took a breath, and I could feel years of pent-up frustration finally finding words. "I'm done being your emotional vending machine. You don't get to ignore me for weeks, treat me like an inconvenience, tell me I'm clingy for wanting basic affection and communication, and then show up demanding attention when you suddenly decide you want it. That's not how relationships work. That's not how people work. Insert drama. Receive attention, get validation on demand. That system's offline. Permanently. The servers have been shut down and the building's been demolished." She stared at me like I'd just spoken in an ancient language she couldn't understand, her mouth hanging open slightly. Behind us, I heard a car door close. Our audience was dispersing now that the show seemed to be wrapping up. The couple from earlier had given up and left, probably going home to tell their own partners about the crazy scene they'd witnessed in the office parking lot. "You'll regret this," Layla finally said, and her voice had gone cold again. All traces of tears magically evaporated like they'd never existed. It was almost impressive how quickly she could flip the switch. When you're alone and miserable, you'll realize what you gave up. You'll come crawling back and I won't be there. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize anymore, if I ever really had. Maybe I will regret it, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. There was no anger, no sadness, just this weird sense of clarity and peace. Maybe one day I'll wake up and think, man, I really miss being treated like garbage and having to walk on eggshells in my own home. But you know what? At least I'll regret it quietly, in my peaceful apartment, without anyone telling me I'm doing it wrong or that my tone needs fixing. I pulled out my car keys, signaling that this conversation was over whether she liked it or not. Go home, Layla. Or go to your sister's, or go wherever you want. I'm not doing this anymore. Not the games, not the manipulation, not the drama. I'm out. And with that, I walked to my car, got in, and drove away, leaving her standing there in the parking lot looking like someone had just told her that gravity was optional and she could no longer rely on it to keep her grounded. The office talked about the incident for a solid week, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it became the most discussed event since Janet from HR accidentally replied all to a company-wide email with a rant about her ex-boyfriend that included details nobody needed burned into their memory banks. Monday morning, I walked into the building steeling myself for the awkwardness, and I wasn't disappointed. The moment I stepped through those doors, it was like walking into a room where everyone had just been talking about you and suddenly went quiet. Except they didn't go quiet. They just pretended to be really interested in their coffee or suddenly found the floor tiles absolutely fascinating. Sarah from marketing was the first brave soul to approach my desk, sliding over with her coffee mug clutched in both hands like it was a shield. So, she said, drawing out the word like she was approaching a wounded animal. That was quite the Friday afternoon entertainment. I appreciated that she went straight for it instead of dancing around the subject. Yeah, I replied, not looking up from my computer where I was pretending to read an email I'd already read 3 times. Sorry you guys had to witness that. If I'd known my wife was planning a surprise parking lot intervention, I would have sold tickets and at least made it worth everyone's time. She laughed, thank God someone had a sense of humor about it, and leaned against my cubicle wall. For what it's worth, I think most people are on your side. Kelly said your wife looked unhinged, and Tom from IT already started calling it the parking lot season finale. I had to hand it to Tom. The man had a gift for nicknames. Within 48 hours, that's what everyone was calling it, complete with people asking if there would be a season 2 or if the show had been canceled. Mike from sales even made a fake movie poster on his lunch break with dramatic text that read, "One man, one parking lot, one very angry wife. Coming this fall." I should have been embarrassed, but honestly, it was kind of hilarious. By Wednesday, the gossip had reached critical mass, with people I'd never even spoken to suddenly knowing intimate details about my marriage. The guy who delivers our office supplies asked me how I was holding up. The intern who started 2 weeks ago, and whose name I still couldn't remember, gave me a sympathetic nod in the break room. Even my boss, who normally stayed out of personal drama like it was radioactive, pulled me aside during lunch to ask if everything was okay at home, with this concerned expression that made me think HR had probably briefed him on the situation. I assured him everything was fine, or at least heading in that direction, and he patted my shoulder with the awkward energy of a man who'd rather be anywhere else having any other conversation. But here's where I made the smartest move of my entire professional career. I emailed HR, not to complain or file some formal grievance, but just to document what had happened, because I'd watched enough true crime documentaries to know that paper trails are your friend when dealing with unstable situations. I kept it professional and factual. On Friday, October 18th at approximately 2:15 p.m., my spouse arrived at the office unannounced and initiated a confrontation in the lobby and parking lot. I'm documenting this incident for corporate records in case there are any future disruptions to the workplace environment. Linda from HR responded within an hour with a message that was both sympathetic and slightly terrifying. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Grant. We've made note of the incident. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need additional support or if the situation escalates. The phrase, "if the situation escalates," hung in my mind like a dark cloud, but I appreciated having it on record. Meanwhile, in the digital realm where all modern drama plays out for maximum visibility, Layla had launched what I can only describe as a full-scale social media pity parade. Her Instagram, which had been dark for 2 weeks, suddenly exploded back to life with the energy of someone who'd just discovered the therapeutic power of vague posting and motivational quotes. Her stories became a continuous scroll of pastel-colored squares with text overlays like "healing from narcissist's broken heart," and "when silence becomes abuse sparkles," and my personal favorite, "you can't pour from an empty cup, so I'm filling mine with self-love cherry blossomed." Each post was more dramatic than the last, clearly designed to paint herself as the victim of some terrible emotional crime, while I was cast as the villain in a story only she was writing. The thing that killed me, and by killed me, I mean made me laugh so hard I nearly spit out my coffee, was that she'd post these things at like 2 in the morning, which meant she was lying awake, crafting the perfect combination of words and emojis to communicate her suffering to her 473 Instagram followers. She shared articles about gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and toxic relationships, each one accompanied by captions like, "This really spoke to me pleading face," or "feeling seen right now 2 hearts." She even posted a selfie in black and white with the caption, "Stronger than yesterday flexed biceps," where she was wearing full makeup and clearly had used about 6 different filters. I just scrolled past it all, sipping my coffee like a retired detective who'd seen every trick in the book and couldn't be bothered to care anymore. Mutual friends started reaching out, trying to figure out what had happened, and inevitably attempting to take sides like we were in some kind of relationship civil war. Jessica, who'd been Layla's college roommate and who I'd always gotten along with fine, sent me a long text message that essentially boiled down to what the hell happened? Layla's posting about narcissistic abuse, and I'm confused. I kept my response simple. She told me to stop bothering her, so I did. Apparently, respecting boundaries is now considered emotional warfare. Hope you're doing well, though. Jessica responded with 3 laughing emojis, and fair enough, dude. She's always been dramatic. My boy Miles called me on Tuesday night, having seen the social media spectacle unfold in real time, because he still followed Layla for reasons he claimed were keeping tabs on the enemy. "Bro," he said, and I could hear him trying not to laugh. "Your ex-wife, sorry, you're still technically wife, is losing it online." She posted a quote that said the trash took itself out, with a picture of a sunset. A sunset, Grant. What does that even mean? It means she's working through her feelings publicly instead of going to therapy like a normal person. I replied, genuinely unbothered by the whole thing. Let her post whatever she wants. I'm over here living my best life, eating actual home-cooked meals, and sleeping through the night. She can have her Instagram pity party. I've got real peace. Zach from the gym had perhaps the best take on the entire situation. We were doing bench presses on Thursday. I'd finally graduated to a respectable weight that didn't make me look like I'd never seen a gym before when I mentioned the social media situation. He sat up, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a towel that had seen better days, and delivered this gem. "Bro, she's wild. Like, certifiably wild. You didn't just dodge a bullet, you dodged a whole fireball. A missile. A tactical nuke. You Matrix said that situation, Neo style." He mimicked doing the backward bullet dodge lean, nearly falling off the bench, and we both cracked up. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. I finally understood what peace felt like, and it tasted better than anything I'd experienced in years. It tasted like morning coffee without anxiety, like Saturday mornings without arguments, like coming home to silence that felt comfortable instead of tense. It tasted like freedom, wrapped in Jim's sweat and Elena's burnt cookies and Miles's terrible advice and Zach's protein shake philosophy. The office might be gossiping, Layla might be posting, mutual friends might be confused, but me? I was sleeping like a baby and waking up grateful that I'd finally chosen myself. 3 months later, and I'm sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee that I made exactly how I like it, strong enough to wake the dead, with just a splash of cream, and nobody's here to tell me I'm doing it wrong or that I should try oat milk because it's better for the environment and your digestive system, Grant. The silence is beautiful. Not the awkward, tense silence that used to fill our house like toxic gas, but the good kind of silence, the kind that feels like a warm blanket instead of a suffocating weight. I'm wearing my ratty college sweatpants that Layla always hated, the ones with the hole in the knee that I refused to throw away out of pure principle. and I've never felt more content in my entire life. No contact. Zero. Zilch. Nada. For 3 glorious months, my phone hasn't lit up with her name. My Instagram hasn't been bombarded with passive-aggressive posts clearly directed at me, and I haven't had to decode any cryptic text messages that required a team of linguists and a psychology degree to understand. It's been radio silence, and let me tell you, the signal has never been clearer. I've learned more about myself in these 3 months than I did in 2 years of marriage, like the fact that I actually enjoy cooking when nobody's standing over my shoulder critiquing my knife skills or sighing dramatically because I dared to use garlic powder instead of fresh garlic. Revolutionary stuff, really. But then, because the universe apparently has a sense of humor and couldn't let me have my peaceful Saturday without some form of entertainment, she emailed me. Not texted. Emailed, like we were business associates discussing a merger instead of 2 people who used to share a bed and argue about thermostat settings. The subject line read, "We need to talk," which immediately made me laugh because no, actually, we didn't need to talk. I needed to finish my coffee and maybe start that woodworking project I'd been planning. She needed to talk. I needed to exist peacefully. I opened it anyway, purely out of morbid curiosity, the same way you slow down to look at a car accident even though you know you probably shouldn't. The email was a masterpiece of manipulation disguised as self-awareness, the kind of thing that probably took her hours to write and rewrite, carefully crafting each sentence to hit maximum guilt while maintaining plausible deniability. She talked about therapy. Apparently she'd started going, which honestly was great news for her future partners. She mentioned new beginnings and how she'd been doing a lot of work on herself and how she realized her communication style was toxic. There were phrases like growth journey and healing process and taking accountability sprinkled throughout like buzzwords in a corporate presentation. But here's the thing about gaining clarity and distance from a toxic situation. You develop this almost supernatural ability to read between the lines and translate bullshit into plain English. What the email really said, stripped of all the therapy speak and pseudo-intellectual self-reflection, was, "The new guy I thought was better than you dumped me. I'm lonely, and I'm hoping you've forgotten how terrible I treated you so I can come back and do it again." The translation was so obvious it might as well have been written in neon lights across my computer screen. She'd found someone else, probably during or right after our parking lot showdown. Someone who seemed exciting and new and who didn't know her patterns yet. And now that hadn't worked out, she was circling back like a boomerang that nobody asked to return. I stared at that email for maybe 30 seconds, my finger hovering over the reply button, and then I did something that would have been impossible for the old Grant. I closed it. Didn't reply, didn't acknowledge, didn't even mark it as read because I genuinely didn't care enough to engage. I just closed my laptop, took another sip of my perfectly made coffee, and went back to planning my day, which involved absolutely zero drama and maximum peace. The woodworking project I'd started had become something of a therapeutic obsession. I'd never been particularly handy. My dad was the one who could build entire decks and fix cars with duct tape and determination. But I discovered that working with my hands, creating something tangible and real, was incredibly satisfying in a way that my office job never was. I was building a small oak desk, nothing fancy or Pinterest-worthy, just a simple, solid piece of furniture that would hold my laptop and coffee mug, and maybe a plant that I'd inevitably forget to water. The process of measuring, cutting, sanding, assembling, it all required focus and patience, 2 things I'd apparently been storing up during my marriage and could now finally use for something productive. That desk became more than just furniture. It became my peace treaty with myself. Every smooth edge I sanded represented letting go of resentment. Every joint I carefully fitted together symbolized rebuilding my life the way I wanted it. And when I finally finished it 3 weeks after that email arrived, setting it up in my apartment's spare room that I converted into a little office space, I stood back and looked at it with genuine pride. I'd built something with my own hands, something that would last, something that nobody could take credit for or criticize or make me feel guilty about. My life had gotten smaller in the months since the separation. And yeah, we were officially separated now, papers filed, and everything moving toward an inevitable divorce that neither of us was fighting. Fewer people in my circle, fewer obligations, fewer things demanding my emotional energy. But here's what nobody tells you about downsizing your life. Smaller doesn't mean worse. Sometimes smaller means better. Sometimes cutting out the excess and the toxicity leaves you with exactly what you need and nothing you don't. I still hit the gym with Zach 3 times a week, still grabbed lunch with Elena on Wednesdays where she'd tell me about her latest disasters in online dating, and I'd share stories about my woodworking victories and failures. Miles and I still met for beers and wings on Thursdays, though now I could actually enjoy them without my phone blowing up with accusatory texts about how I was choosing my friends over my marriage. I'd even started taking a pottery class on Tuesday nights, not because I was any good at it, but because sitting at a wheel and shaping clay into lopsided bowls that would never hold soup properly was strangely meditative. Every morning, I wake up in my apartment where everything is exactly where I left it, and nobody's moved my stuff or reorganized my closet or passive-aggressively loaded the dishwasher wrong just to make a point. I stretch, make my coffee, and sometimes I whisper to myself like a mantra, "No arguments today." And you know what? There aren't any. No debates about tone, no fights about whose turn it is to do whatever arbitrary chore, no walking on eggshells wondering what mood she'll be in. Turns out silence wasn't punishment like Layla tried to frame it in all those Instagram posts. Silence was freedom wearing a really good disguise, the kind of freedom that lets you breathe deeply and sleep soundly and remember who you were before you spent all your energy trying to be enough for someone who'd already decided you weren't. And if she ever decides to come back again, if she sends more emails or shows up at my apartment or tries some new tactic to wedge her way back into my life, well, I'll be busy. Busy not bothering her, busy living peacefully, busy building furniture and throwing crooked pottery and laughing with friends who actually add value to my life instead of draining it. I've got my oak desk, my terrible coffee habits, my gym routine, and my peace. And honestly, that's more than enough.